that takes you a while, though. I noticed that, like whatever the time is, you're recording that, so
Yeah, it's
it takes
good.
a while.
It's good jog length, like
But
25 minutes.
but it is convenient because you know what? I drive and boom, But you know what's a little I don't understand yet? I got to figure out is the layout of how it goes with the book right now.
Say it again.
There's like if I remember right, there's like 5 different audio clips, and I understand they're not exactly in chronological order.
I don't know how they show up on SoundCloud.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out. 'Cause they say chapter 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, and then it's like reverse. It's like 2, 1 is before 1, 1, 2 or something. I'm like,
Oh, yeah?
I'm like, let me start listening to it and see where it's at.
Yeah. There's a I think it's called How to Approach the Book. And then
Say it
there's
again?
like a introduction.
Oh, yes. You're right.
And then there's like introductory story.
But otherwise, what? It follows, it is in chronological order going down? Like that. If you play the first audio clip, that's the introduction, the beginning.
No.
I don't know how it appears. I carries on to answer that.
Yeah. I haven't figured out on SoundCloud how to order it. They seem to order it their own way.
Yeah.
But so what we've done is section 1, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then section 2, 1, 2. So if you look at the section orders.
That'll go. Okay, I'm gonna look out for that. It is convenient though to just listen to it.
Yeah. We've been thinking about putting them as a clump, or you can make a playlist too.
Yeah. We'll see if we can get a more intuitive order.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. We've been talking about how to do that, so that's good feedback.
Although it was just great to hear, turn it on, and you don't know what to expect. I don't know, if it was going to be like Siri telling the story. Next thing you know, it's Ken. I'm like, holy shit,
Boom.
Ken does this.
Yep.
That's great, Ken.
Yeah. You'll hear other talent voices on there.
I'm sure Terry's next. Maybe John the author can do a chapter.
Well, John's got a couple of sections recorded there, and Elise has a couple of sections too.
Good. So what's on the agenda for tonight?
We're going to continue with discussion of programming. You have any questions on what we covered yesterday or previously, Ralph?
No, you know what? I'm just going along with it, and even myself, my curiosity is peaking as I'm on rolling more pages of the book to see how I'm only on chapter 3, but John's got a very interesting perspective of the stories and how they unfold with what they're connecting with Bob's story so far. So that's what's leading me to I want to hear more examples of where things can go back. To go back to yesterday, all right, like Terry, we left off, Terry was talking about, her blind spots, so to speak, right? And, for me, I was curious to know, where does she trace it back to her early memories, and is it just one memory? With her realizing this, has it helped her get over, that old programming?
Let's ask her.
Okay.
You get that, Terry?
Yeah, I'm turning on the camera. I'm trying anyway. So I'm not sure I'm going to get the camera, but we can talk that. So Ralph, with my rewrite, it started with one whole branch of things. And that was an event where I'm getting a weird sound quality here.
Yeah, let's just mute mics.
There you go. That might be.
We got a lot of unmuted mics, but just
Okay.
mute them and then
Is
come
that
on.
any better?
Come on.
Ah, that's better.
Yeah.
So in my rewrite, I started with an event where I broke a vase. My family was, kind of middle class, and it was a little piece of artwork they had that was important to them, and I was kind of, off in my own world and broke it. And so I thought, well, I can go off in my room and draw pretty pictures, or I can make this all better. And so that kind of launched a whole series of things where I thought I was going to, quote, be in trouble. And I was always looking how to fix. So there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of, oh, I've done something wrong, I'm going to be in trouble, and I have to run off by myself to figure out a way to control making it better. And so that showed up in lots and lots of places where I was trying to fix and run things and avoid getting what I thought was going to be in trouble. And then as I got deeper into this work and had more conversations with people, I started finding other things, other events in my memory. So it wasn't just a one-time thing. And so what has been really valuable for me, and I think we'll talk about this more tonight, is once I began learning about the tool and learning how useful it was to get to talk to other people about some of this stuff, I began sort of whacking away at a couple other memories and all the branches that came out of it. And for me, one of the difficult things is because I was so convinced that logical thinking and how I talked to myself about stuff was valuable and useful and made sense. I was using kind of like the computer display to try to rewrite the code. So I actually had some kind of resistance of actually saying, oh, does this really start from these memories? I could sort of see it, but I also thought, well, I can just figure out a logical way to make this all work now.
Resistance, Terry? That's what you call that?
Yeah, that's being delicate, I guess. Yeah, I argued up and down.
Yeah.
And
well, you got your worldview ass kicked many times, Terry, right?
Oh yeah, and it took some pretty hard knocks. I mean, I became a manager of a nonprofit really young, and so I was pretty convinced that whatever I said worked and went because I had people that would follow what I said. And then when I came to work for you, and when I came to work for Elise and do some, then I had to realize, no, just because I thought it or had my own situation didn't mean that it worked with anybody else. And I didn't know nearly as much about business or working with other people as I thought. So because I'd been doing it for so many years, I was pretty darn sure that I knew. And and it didn't. And to add to that, I became a lawyer, and so I thought I had skills about how to argue my position.
Oh yeah.
So what really took me by surprise is starting to see when folks start saying, Terry, I don't care what you think you've changed. I don't care how you think about it. Look, there it is again. You're being a know-it-all, or you're trying to control. And I had to start saying, oh my gosh, this is happening whether I'm paying attention or telling myself consciously to do something else. It's there all the time. And yeah, after and it wasn't just one person. A whole lot of people had to convince me that the way I thought about something was really based on stuff that I told myself from the time I was little. And it didn't necessarily line up with how anybody else was thinking or seeing or whatever.
But there was really no convincing you, right?
Not for a long time. No, I was not convinced. That's
Yeah,
really
but
true.
seriously though, I mean, even in the, even as you started to whittle away at that, it was a more a surrender than would you say?
Yeah, in a way, it was like piece by piece. It's like I finally realized that, or it isn't what realize is putting it too delicately. Yeah, I had no more arguments. I think what finally got to is I realized how much energy it was taking to hold some of this in place. And I also had been pretty much in denial about the effect it was having on people around me. And so when it first got brought my attention, I didn't even want to look at the effect I was having. So there were some pretty big walls around just even thinking like, what are you doing, and why are you doing this to people that you say that you care about? Because I was pretty darn convinced I was caring, and so uh, yeah, basically over time, when it got kicked enough times, and and my arguments were pretty much, well, not pretty much, they were shown as being like, no, they don't make any sense, and why are you doing this to begin with? Why are you doing it to yourself? Why are you doing it to people you care about? Is this really what you're going for? And so it took me hearing from a bunch of different places before it got through. Now, not everybody has to do that. You can actually try it on and look at it. But the thing that I kept coming back for is I knew on some level that that I could recognize a truth in there. And even though I didn't like it and I was uncomfortable with it, it's like, dang, you know what? I think there's something here. So I kept just coming back and say, all right, let me look at it again. Let me check it again. And that's what it took. So Ralph, does that give you an idea?
Yeah, and when you're saying let me check it again, is that like going into the float tank and rethinking your same memory, the same vase you broke? Like every time you go in the tank, you get more details.
Well, I didn't have that. It's more that the tank helped me slow down below the frenzy and where I talk to myself. And if the more I could do that, the more I could start to hear and take in what my friends and colleagues were saying. Because when I was in kind of debating, arguing, figuring out, it didn't get in. They were just, people would just talk to what I already computed. They were talking to my program. They weren't really getting underneath it. So
how do you feel? How do you feel though? Like now, is it naturally like you're not wanting to be controlling anymore, or do you feel like
there are times when it still pops up. I have, and where I can walk, but I can see it a lot faster now, and where I defended, boy, that moves so much faster. And there's other places where I can see, in retrospect, I look back and say, you know what, I'm not doing this the same way that I did. And so I can see some of those places too. So I can't tell you for me it was a silver bullet, but I can definitely tell you that, how I'm approaching my second marriage, how I'm approaching now working with the group of people on the call is way different than where I started. And how I can move through things is a lot faster and smoother than it was when I started. So for me, it's like, okay, these are tools. I'm still practicing and getting better with them.
Yeah.
But they've made a big difference for me.
Would you say it's giving you like a type of peace?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's more that I'm just real about whatever is there. So like whatever, I can look at it and say, yep, there it is. And sometimes I get mad about it, sometimes I'm happy about it, but it's real.
Yeah.
Rather than pretending it's something else. And so is it peaceful? Man, not every day, but is it a lot closer to real and instead of pretend? Oh yeah.
Can I can I help you out a little bit, Ralph? I don't
Yeah,
think
go for it.
Terry does. I don't, or Terry, maybe I should help you out. I don't think you're understanding what Ralph wants to know.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and I don't know. Maybe it's just I've had a long day, so and I don't know. You can quote me on this, Ralph, but I think Terry, what Ralph is asking is, how does he know that his program is written? So you've given an example of how your program is written. So, like, I don't know if you've actually answered that. Because I think that's what you asked yesterday too, right, Ralph?
Yep, she's kind of right on that.
So how do I know how the program was written originally?
Yeah.
How did you rewrite it?
Oh,
Both.
well, okay. So what I did is I did the process of the Skull Means program. Okay, and so but to do that, I started writing down, like we talked the other day about. Okay, what do you remember when you were a little kid? 2, 3, 4, 5. What's your earliest memories? And so that took a little while for me to dredge some of those out, and then there were questions about that, about what did I think about it, why did it happen, what was going on, and those questions and the way I went about asking the questions, because I was using the program I had to talk about all of that. So the way I described things were really careful, really packaged. I tended to argue things, so I tended to want to fix something when I thought I was saying or doing it wrong. That was all right there. And just how I told my story and how I answered questions.
Rightness. Here's my kind of outside synopsis. You tell me, Terry, if I'm close here.
Okay.
It's like you discovered some early experiences where you decided that being right was well, by God, it you were gonna show that you were right. Maybe that was the vase. Maybe that was some other things.
Yeah. I mean, that program actually was not quite what I did right away in my rewrite, because later on I had realized that I was trying to be right with my mom all the time. So in the rewrite, I was trying to deal with where I lied and try to fix everything and paper over things. Later on, I particularly when I bumped up against where I was not where it wasn't working when I worked at the float centers, then I had to really look at that be right thing.
Okay, so you found origin points for that program that you wrote.
Absolutely, in both cases. Yep. And they were both in memories that I had. Yeah.
And the outside world, me, Elise, John, Vanessa, others that were talking to you, were pointing at that over and over again.
Yeah.
What's that? Why is that there? Why are you saying that? How come you're doing that?
Exactly.
How come you're always stressed out? How come you do everything, all sorts of behaviors, right, that were a result of that program.
Yep.
I mean, that was an ass-kicking of a worldview that you put in place when you were a toddler.
Oh, yeah, exactly. and it was so much a part of my worldview. I couldn't see how wide that it was absolutely everywhere. And so it took, the whole group of people to sort of say, there it is again. There, well, what the hell is that? Why are you doing that? I thought you said that was dealt with, and because otherwise I would just brush it off. I mean, that's what that rightness program would do, is it would say, okay, but I know, or, but you're not really right here. I know I've got this other thing that works. So I would just kind of partially deal with something, but hang on to some little place where I was still right. So yeah, it took an ass kicking to get my attention, really. It's like a little kid. This kid off doing what they always do, and you got to get their attention.
Okay.
And to get my attention to think, gee, Terry, just because you think it or do it doesn't mean that there's a rightness or correctness or accuracy. Yeah, that took a while. But to get back to your question, Ralph, do I know 100% know if that's exactly the event? Yeah, maybe not, but I can really mark the feeling and some behavior that started in those places. Maybe it started a little earlier, I don't know, but I can really see it in those events.
Look, we covered the other day, if you remember an event from back then, that event has a significance tied to it. It does. What the significance is? Well, you wrote code. You decided something about that event. Particularly, you decided something you thought was real about that event. Does it mean it was actually real? No, it doesn't mean that. In fact, it seems to me that the more out of whack or out of alignment that decision that little kid made about compared to what was actually going on creates a bigger gulf, a bigger division, a bigger separation, a bigger weight energy, whatever you want to call it. Now you end for life with essentially a program that's built on a flimsy fantasy. What are you going to build on that? What kind of relationship area did you get built on you wanting to be right or trying to fix mistakes so that people couldn't see them? It got you fired from Quantum.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it took.
Yeah, it did, and I'm quite sure it was a factor in the ending of my first marriage. In terms of when I looked at what I brought to that.
Yeah. Could. Yeah. Sounds. Sounds likely. Ralph, you good with where we are now, or anybody else have any questions?
In my thought, the reason why I was asking these questions, Ken, is because remember the other day you had the upside down pyramid?
Yep.
And one program leads to more programs, which leads to more programs. What I've been kind of trying to think about in my meta program is on my reverse pyramid, for this feeling I'm trying to get resolved. Did I actually get down to the first part of the upside down pyramid? Or did I start touching, like the next level up? Not exactly the original program, but programs written from that program.
How old were you when you remembered that the event that you're remembering? How old were you?
5 or 6.
Nope, there's more down below that.
Yeah. See, and that's what I'm saying is I have a feeling, because the same feeling I have with that, like that, it's not like an anger. It's not like I'm an angry guy. But there's this frustration, angry feeling that it happens. It comes up to me at a few things in my life. It could just be anything sometimes, And I feel like I unlocked one layer of my upside down pyramid, but I didn't get down to, all the way at the bottom. That's why I was asking Terry, like with her memory, does she feel like she actually got to the initial one where you can actually rewrite it and, accept it and move on?
Ralph, they're never going to tell you this, I guess. Why don't you guys let him up and explain to him how rewrite actually works, Jenny?
So, Ralph, usually you do the introduction class first, of course, and it'll be the first couple of steps, 11 steps that you do in your rewrite. So it'll start with goals, means, like we did the other night. Hold on. But you'll start with the goals, means, and then you'll go down through those 11 steps like we were going through when we went through the introduction class. We use an application called Slack, and what happens is you write your story out, and we'll ask you questions throughout the entire thing so that you can get a deeper look and actually think about some of these things, because we go through it, like the way that we tell our story isn't always exactly the way that it is, and from an outside perspective, our facilitators that'll be on your rewrite asking you questions, it changes how you see your story. And then you redo each step. You start with a goal, you go through means, you go through charisma, et cetera, et cetera. So.
And then at one point you write your rewrite.
That is the rewrite.
That is the rewrite, going through the 11 steps.
Again, yeah. Introduction and then the rewrite. So you write your story and then you start with a goal, to countermand what's in place. You're talking about anger here, right?
Yeah, let's say, yeah. Let's say that's it. If that's my goal, give me an example.
What's your goal, Ralph?
To reprogram my anger, let's say.
No, can't do it because because you don't listen. Anger is part of a program set that has to do with survival the survival priority list. In other words, anger is a result of you being threatened someplace. Honest to God, you don't want to get rid of the anger. You don't want to get rid of the fear. You don't want to get rid of freezing in place. What you want to get rid of is what the fuck you define as a threat. Really, that's what you got to do. It ain't about your damned anger, dude. It's about what threatens you.
Yeah, the anger comes after that.
Yeah. Yeah, so go on. I'm trying to find. My goal is to figure out what threatens me, and I thought I figured it out, but now the more I think about it, like you said, there's got to be deeper. How do I find that out? Start really dissecting early childhood memories.
How about chilling?
How about what?
Chilling.
Just chill. Just chill it all the way out. Back it all the way down, and let it ride there for a little bit. It's been there for quite a while. And it's something that you do all of the time, and you can't see it because it's what you look with. So it's going to take somebody like Ken or somebody that knows you to stop you and say, this thing right here you're doing, you shouldn't be doing that. And when they do stop you, Ralph, you're going to absolutely have a hissy fit and fall in it, dude.
Yeah, because nobody wants to change. See what I mean?
No, it's not that. Because what happens is that the moment that you see that, how many times in your life that you looked that thing square in the eye and said, it ain't there. And you walked right on by it. And you're embarrassed about every one of those times. And it will piss you off. Everybody gets pissed off about it. And, don't feel bad about it. I mean, it just happens, dude.
Yeah.
And,
that's your Ken?
Oh, Ralph, yeah. Nah, not me. I mean, John means everybody but me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, Ken.
He doesn't mean me, yeah.
Actually, John,
I'm a special case.
John, you told a story about Moshe a couple nights back, and it's exactly what you described in the rewrite when he just completely exploded because he saw it.
Yeah.
And it happened. So you can expect that.
And the thing is that he wasn't mad. I mean, he wasn't mad at. I mean, he was expressing it like he was angry with you, right?
Yeah.
That really wasn't what was going on. I mean, was he angry with you? Oh yeah, he was. but that really wasn't what he was mad about. It's like, wow, how could I have possibly missed this thing all these years?
Yep.
And it's like, man, it's painful to when you look at it. No kidding, it is. So Ralph, give yourself a chance here. It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. Hey, John, what's the programming? First chapter of the book. How come? Why do you need to learn the tool of programming first?
Oh man. If you don't learn about programming, how? Yeah, I guess I should do this. They tell me I'm supposed to, so okay, I'm doing it. Okay. People don't realize that we're all little pet Sibyls. We're little Sablitos, y Sablitas.
As in the movie with the woman with multiple personalities.
Oh yeah, that one. I mean, we're just all eat up with that stuff. And the thing is that we lie about it. I mean, what the hell? We all lie about it. We say, no, that's not us. No, that's not that. But we have somebody that drives the car. We have somebody else that mows the lawn, that takes out chores, that's on the honey-do list. We have somebody else that goes to work. We have somebody else who is at work. We have somebody else who is doing business. I mean, we have these different people. And because we have these different people, the amount of time that we can spend on any given thought is extremely limited. Now, they're not actually people, they're entities, or they're partially formed personalities, maybe. I don't know what they are. But let's just call them modes, for lack of a better way of talking about it, okay? They're just different ways that we form up and talk to people.
Like you could say, Ken at work, Ken at home.
Oh, yeah.
Ken with the boys, Ken with the women.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ken on the prowl. That's one.
All right. Maybe we should use me then.
Oh, we shouldn't do that. It's the family.
Family show.
About that part. Okay. Well, anyway, there's all those Kens, and for the most part, Ken's a pretty nice guy and everything. But the fact of the matter is that when you get down to it, Ken kind of gets lost in all that stuff that he gets to thinking about. Not a bad guy, he just gets lost in it is all. So what do? Do we throw Ken out with the bathwater? Yeah, maybe not this week, but it's coming up here, I guess, huh? I mean, really, is that what we're going to do with this? Or are we going to pretend as though that Ken's not worth a damn because why? He has these different personalities? Why don't we accept them and just simply say, okay, look, if we figure out why that you have to act this other way with this particular event in your life, why don't you go back in your memory and figure out why you decided to change that? I don't know. Maybe if you can figure out why you changed it, maybe you can flip it back to where it's supposed to be or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're saying go back to a point of origin of where the
very first time something happened to you that way. Yep. And all of a sudden right there, it's like George said the other night, I mean, he is so sure that he's right because mom can't understand what it means for him to be a gay guy. Now, I'm not saying anything wrong about it. Who the hell no, mom can't understand. Forgive us, she's not a guy. And the second, she's not gay either. So no, she's not going to understand. So, but she has to protect him nonetheless. And so George grows up being protected, and he thinks that whole protected thing where he acts like mom is being gay. Not necessarily. Maybe it's just being silly. I don't know because I'm not gay, but when I stop and say, okay, are you being a human person or are you being a person? And all of a sudden he says, oh, wait a second. I need to look at this particular part like I'm a person, not like I'm gay. Oh, okay, then that's a solution for George. It wasn't one for me because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
But I can ask the question. And if I can ask the question in such a way that George can hear it, then George reduces that whole multiple personality thing by a notch or two. That gives him more ability to think. That's the first thing that we want to do about any types of building any type of thought, is we want to have a reason for bringing ourselves under one hat. You know, you ought not have more than one hat. You know, if you have more than one hat, people get confused about who the hell you are.
Yeah, you call that be one.
That's what I call it. Yeah, I call it being or being at one, or yeah, something like that. You know, it's one entity is what we're looking for.
Lilly calls it being general purpose.
Yeah, he does. But from within the general purpose concept, it's really hard to see that's what you're doing is being at one. But if you stand outside of the computer, I mean, from inside the computer, you have to look at it like it's general purpose. From outside the computer, you have to look at it like you're just trying to be one entity there, just standing up, you know, not double vision or triple vision or quadruple vision when they see you.
Yeah.
That's the first step. That's the first step to any thought, is to figure out where are we standing here to find the solution. Okay, that's you got to know. Everybody has to be at one with what the solution is. Look at the hassle that's causing it with the coronavirus out of the White House right this very moment. I mean, it's mind-boggling. You know, a doctor said, you know, CNN's quoted them wrong. The doctor said, no, they said it right. with Trump saying, no, you got it wrong. And he said, no, they got it right. Which now, what's the truth really? Nobody can really figure that out. See, now nobody can know what the truth is because you got two different opinions going in two different directions, and people are going to go nuts over it. There, that's the reason I wrote the book. I wrote that chapter in the book.
Makes sense. Thanks.
So Ken, I'm curious for a second. If we just, when people sit in for an introduction to the rewrite, there's a couple of ground rules that we like to establish, right? And I think those ground rules are super important for utilizing programming and approaching that B1.
Yeah.
Maybe it'd be worthwhile to bring them up just to frame it a little bit.
Yeah. We start with blame.
Blame.
Ta-da, blame. So how about for this intro class, everybody, we say, you put blame on the back shelf for the next 2 or 3 days that we do this intro class. If you want to put it up when it's done, we say hee. You could pick it up afterwards, and everybody nods their head and says, yeah, I'm not going to blame.
Oh, Ken, everyone understands the full depth of what you're talking about, right? Right out of the gate.
Oh, yeah. They're all like, got it. Not me. I will now be done with blame. But that blame's a non-starter, as they'd say, because if you're going to deal with programming, well, and you're going to have to deal with the fact that, oops, you wrote it. We could talk to Terry or anybody else as much as until your heart's blue or content about something that's observable like a neon sign to the outside world. But unless until she owns up that that's hers and she wrote that, if she's going to take that and say, yeah, that wasn't because of me. You know, you don't know my mom. You don't know her. It doesn't matter, Terry or whoever, or George or Chris Olson. I don't have to know your mom. I know that you wrote that code, and therefore blame is one of those ground rules that Paul's talking about. Its cousin is responsibility. Yep. If you made the mess, well, that pretty much says you're going to be the one that's got to clean it up. What other ones do we cover? Balance of internal and external reality.
Yeah, that's an important one.
Yeah, that's an important one, right? Because anytime you got a fantasy running, like Terry was describing, you can call that a fantasy. It's not based on anything real. I am going to be right. Or Chris Olson saying, I just can't do it. I can't. They won't approve of me, or what, whatever. And then it's a cycle of his, like Bob in the story, seeking the disapproval and getting it, and then saying, see. Or as Bob said, my dad is really scary. Chris Olson said, I really do disappoint my parents, or something like that. There's an imbalance there. And like John says, you've got a division of authority. You've got a system then which energetically is split. in terms of resources. That ain't one. You know, it's an energetic thing. If you're gonna dichotomies, that's another one. That
that was my next one. Yep.
Yeah. So if you're limited to buckets of things being either or, I'm right, you're wrong. Black and white. It's not good. It's bad. And connecting it that way, that's not. I mean, it may be handy, and it gets by, but it's a lazy, incomplete way of thinking because things aren't like that. Two things can be true at the same time.
So you're in an introduction and you're talking about blame. So
Yep.
you're talking about you're in a class. So if you do an introduction, it's a class. Other people are also doing an introduction, and there's teachers.
Yeah, it's like that.
So let's say in the class is like, you talk about the blame. Fine. Let me say I'm a guy that I'm not. Oh, not me.
You nod your head, and that's everyone's gonna nod their head that they understand, and we're gonna go through those introductory or foundational concepts that Paul referenced. Everybody's gonna nod their head, and I know in advance that they're just nodding their head.
So then, where does the class go? Ultimately, to the rewrite.
Well, then we do a practice program, which takes up about 2/3 of the whole intro class. So over a 2-day weekend, it's like a day and a half, or often we'll run the intro classes now 3 consecutive weeknights. So we'll go through the first part in like less than the first night, start writing a program. So the rest of it, the balance of it then is those 11 steps.
Oh, and Ralph, I know for a fact you would absolutely love this. One of the reasons I know you'd love it is when I took mine, there were at least, I don't know, Ken, 6, 7, 8 other intro class participants, at least. And what's so wonderful about that is I got to see all the places that they were blind, right? And then when it was my turn, and I couldn't see it, I had to remember that.
Yeah.
And it's so instructive. I mean, it's such a great experience.
Yeah. And I don't know, if it was the last one. We had a husband and wife take it, and we were talking to the husband about just blowing by what the wife says and not listening to her, not hearing anything that she says. And he was taking it on the chin, deservedly, because he needed to hear this. He did. And she's sitting kind of on the couch next to him, really just quietly smiling, as if it's like, thank God somebody else is finally talking to this dude about this. Okay.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So basically, in the intro class, you consciously, you write a program, not consciously. You just write a program, and like any program, buy a car, buy a house, whatever you want. And in the rewrite, you rewrite a program that you installed. Why do we ask you to have those rules of engagement so you don't put any charge on them? So, for instance, like you can't blame your mom or dad. It was your decision. So when you're, putting in each step, you have to consider all those steps that Ken was talking about: blame, responsibility, dichotomies, internal and external reality. Like you have to consider all those places to put in a step in the intro, in the rewrite.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things is like blame and responsibility. If you don't actually take care of those things, you're always pushing it off to a later date, to not ever deal with it in the first place.
You haven't done that, Jenny.
Oh no, never.
You want to share one of your own B1 or programming experiences?
Oh my gosh, there's so many to deal with. The flaws are endless. No, I, like Jesse, I really had to deal with my poor me's because, I grew up in Backwood, Pennsylvania too, and well, I mean, my mom, my grandmother, my entire family, lived there. And, that's something I really, really had to consider because all the time I was, oh, I couldn't do this because, who knows what. It was too dark outside. It was cloudy, so I never really had to deal with anything. And that's how I my entire family lives their lives too. I mean, my mom got constant pain because she won't deal with certain things. I know for myself that some of my own foibles have been, like my drug habits, that I dealt with. Kept people away because I felt sorry for myself, and the only way that I could deal with that actually was taking a good hard look at why. When I did my rewrite, I did it when I was 6 months old, and my grandfather kicking over my bassinet, he didn't like that my mother was with an Asian man, and I remember later in my life, when I was like 9, I think it was, my grandfather apologized to me because it wasn't my fault I was Asian, and it's like I was embarrassed about being Asian for forever, and it's just a part of who I am, but I also see how that carried out about how I was embarrassed about my dad being Asian and oh yeah. Lots of things.
Ralph had asked the question about it was kind of like, well, what's different now? What's the takeaway? You have more energy, you get more things done, you're more relaxed, or what, how do you talk about that?
Well, the fact that I actually talk to people is a big difference. I mean, I used to hide for a majority of my life. This idea of showing different faces. God, I was the queen of doing that.
Yeah.
I was whoever anybody wanted me to be because I could. That's how I fit in. I been on construction crews. I was one of the boys.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of ideas like that.
I know when I first met you, you were over, I guess, at Art of Floating, and you always, my recollection is you always had a hoodie on, almost like you didn't want people to see you. And then when anybody said something, you'd have like a laugh about it, like it was funny. But now you're pretty pretty direct. If you see something that is causing someone grief, like myself, you're going to say it, and that's a difference. See?
It took me a while to get there, though, you know, to actually understand what it was like to be someone's friend, really, you know, rather than kissing somebody's ass or just wanting to be liked. You know, there's a huge difference in those ideas and making a difference for someone, because I know that in my life, if people weren't that, I don't know, direct or even, if you want to say, hard on me, because I wasn't, you know, that disciplined to actually value myself, you know. And people aren't always able to do that for themselves because they can't see what it is that they're doing, you know. I know that was the case for me.
Yeah. John's comment about baby and the bathwater. What do you do? You know, here you are, or here I am in your life. Ralph is in mine, or Elise, or anyone who's showing up in my float center. What do you do? Just,
I throw them out, of course.
say it again.
I said you throw them out, of course.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
You know, it's interesting that, you know, they say, because one of the early stories, like maybe the first Bob story or the introduction to the Bob story, I can't remember which one, the teacher says something like, I'm gonna deal with him really directly here and quote, and see if I can run him off. Huh. Interesting, right? It does.
Well, the ones that come back are the ones that are keepers, you know.
Yeah. 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 And if someone ain't gonna fight for themselves, then
Or even take the time to get to know what you're saying and know why you're saying them. I know that took me a while. You know, what caring actually looks like is something completely than what I ever learned, you know.
well, that's for freaking sure for me too. Absolutely. Yeah. I thought it was like polite smiles, and as long as you agreed with me and did what I said, we were all cool.
Well, you know, it wasn't until, well, you know, I've had William now for a year, and the difference is that I've been having to deal with raising William has been a lot different than what I was raised, you know.
Yeah.
Or at least it seems like it, you know, because it's interesting seeing a young biocomputer, you know, growing and changing and learning, and he's a replica of me, you know. I see the things that I do in him, and so
yeah, Jenny, that is such a mirror that you've got there for all of your programming. It's wonderful.
Oh my God.
Welcome to it. It's a good time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've really had to put all of the things that I've learned, you know, with programming in place.
Absolutely.
I mean, because I can see it. I see it every day, from the time that, you know, that little boy wakes up in the morning to the time he goes to bed. So it's a wonderful experience.
How do you use the tool of programming, Paul?
How do I use the tool of programming?
Yeah.
Well, I use it to help my staff at work to see the things that they don't see in their behavior. You know, I pull them up in the same way we do here. My office isn't officially a patio chat, but But if you talk to any of the people that work closely with me, after about a year, they start to ask questions of the people that are working under them in the same way. So yeah, I use it all the time to help my staff be one and move towards that. It's a little tougher because in this environment, people are here to do that, right? We're here to talk about programming. We're here to talk about the Office of Shaman. In work, in a business, in a company, that's not why people are there. But on the counter side to this is business is serious business, and making money has a motivator, right, behind it. And that provides a fair vehicle of motivation for me to help people see these things. So that's how I use it.
Yeah. It's a bottom line issue.
Yeah. And I have the ability to force people into these situations.
Yeah. Force them.
Yeah, I mean, when your boss that's paying your salary tells you need to look at something, you can still choose not to look at it, but you might not have a job.
True.
So, and I can't have people that are not rowing together. So, communication and all those ground rules about blame and fantasy and internal and external reality, all those rules, they apply in my office. It's pretty much like a tank office, Ken.
Yeah, I bet.
I just can't float.
See, maybe there'll be a float center up around you soon.
Yeah, there are some. I haven't been to any in a while, and obviously not in the last couple of months. So we'll check them out when they open up again.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't you think though? I mean, being on lockdown or whatever you want to call this COVID thing, being a lot like being in a tank office?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's why Patio Chats is doing well here.
I'd go so far as to say we're all in the midst of a Delta experience, or at least driving our thoughts down to a level that's tank-like. But getting shaken out of our everyday familiarity is just the kind of event to do that. I don't think that's much
for sure
than being in a float tank. Questions? Comments? You with on this, Pam?
Yes, yeah, no, I'm taking notes. I'm, reviewing the chapter during the day before we meet so that I kind of go review my own program and all the programming. So, yeah, I feel like I missed a step, so I'm going to go back and do that, because when I did the rewrite, I never got an opportunity to write my trajectory, and I think that I'm going to do that and see what comes up for me.
And by trajectory,
my story, whatever that, it's changed now a lot.
maybe it's the case that you dealt with something, but there is more than a something often, and there's a bunch or a group or a handful of something.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Just to review that. And, I'm kind of at a place where I'm content, and I'm not sure that that's the most real that I can be. I believe, I think my belief system is I think I just stopped. Like I got to a particular place that made me just feel this this is my most real. This is the most clarity I've ever had of myself. But I wanted to come back now because I feel like I'm ready to grow again.
Okay. Well, good. That I can identify with getting to a place and be like, yeah, this is different, way more pleasant, less stress, more clarity, only to then resolve something else and then another something else and then another something else and then another something else.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I feel like I'm gonna do the trajectory, the story, and see what comes up for me.
Okay. Well, if you want someone to talk to about that, you know where to find me.
Thank you.
All right. Any comments, questions before we wrap up for tonight?
That Jenny story, that was a good one. That's sticking to me a little bit. The perspective of where she's coming from. Really, I don't have time. Again, it's just kind of going into my head now, and I want to take the time to think about it. But I guess when you're doing a rewrite, if you're hearing other people's stories, that does really kind of help think about where you're at with your story. And again, that was her blind spot, but it kind of if it's reminding me of like my own blind spot. So now I need to go back and think about what that actually means, because I don't know. I think it could have an effect on me. So like that. Thanks, Jenny, for sharing that.
Absolutely, Ralph. Anytime.
Cool. All right, then. How about we regroup tomorrow evening, 8 p.m., where we'll talk about, I don't know, what's next, Terry?
Well, we'll check to see if there's anything left from programming, and then start moving on to changing points of view.
Okay. That's the second tool, moving the assemblage point.
Right.
Okay, good. Well, that should be interesting.
So the second chapter is up on SoundCloud, and the story will be up shortly.
Yeah. For those that have already figured it out, there's always a chapter followed by a Bob story. So programming has a chapter and then a Bob story. Moving the assemblage point, you can call, I guess, changing points of view, a chapter and then a Bob story. In that order. Okay? Well, then we'll see you all mañana.
Awesome. Good night, guys.
Good hanging with you tonight. Thanks all.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, all.
Night, night.